At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI garbage. What's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it that way. I'm Daniel Pierce, and I'm going to be your narrator. Now, let's begin. Captain Urktar and his crew were stunned when the 3D display of the supposedly decompressed nav station powered back on, revealing an ancient interface they struggled to decipher. That is, except for a single line of bold red text warning them about their current spatial position. Here be monsters. Captain Urktar didn't do much better than his crew at the impossible sight. His yellow eyes remained glued to the display, pupils contracting to narrow slits as they traced the archaic symbols floating in the holographic projection. His white facial skin, so white that it looked like polished pearl under the bridge's ambient lighting, could only furrow at the forehead, where deep ridges formed in his confusion. His elephant-like ears, each as large as a dinner plate and lined with delicate purple veins, grew so tense they pressed flat against the back of his skull, sealing his ear channels completely. The quiet noise of the bridge, the chirp of routine system checks, the whisper of recycled air, suddenly gave way to just his own heartbeat thundering in the silence of his sealed hearing. A shadow fell across the display as someone stepped directly between him and the impossible sight. The sudden obstruction jolted Urktar back to reality, his ears springing forward with an audible pop as they released from his skull. The moment his ear channels cleared, sound crashed back into his world like a breaking wave. Zor stood before him, the weapons chief's scaled blue hands gesturing animatedly, his voice hinting at the panic that seasoned soldiers got when faced with the inexplicable.
Captain! Captain! Are you hearing me?
Zor's voice finally registered.
What should we do? This equipment, it's been dead for 3 centuries. The power couplings were removed during the last refit. How is this old map working?
Urktar straightened his uniform, a gesture meant more to buy himself a moment to think than to fix any real disarray. His 4-fingered hand smoothed the deep purple fabric in a show of calm, even as his mind raced. The engineering team, he said, his voice filled with more authority than he felt, must have forgotten to fully disconnect the old systems during the upgrade. You know how they are. Probably decided it was too much work to remove the connections, since ripping them out would mean restructuring half the bridge's infrastructure. The excuse sounded hollow, even to his own ears. But he pressed on, adding a dismissive wave of his hand. Sloppy work, nothing more. These contractors always cut corners when they think no one's watching. The Azori Imperial fleet was old, ancient by most species standards. Their ships had been traveling the stars for millennia, accumulating modifications and upgrades like barnacles on an ocean vessel. This had to be some kind of malfunction, a ghost in the machine triggered by their arrival in this uncharted system. Urktar tried desperately to ignore the memory that surfaced unbidden. Just 3 weeks ago, during his routine inspection of the maintenance deck directly below the bridge, he had seen the power cables to these old consoles with his own eyes. They hadn't just been disconnected, they'd been severed completely. The ends capped and sealed, the entire array of ancient optic lines cut so thoroughly that repair would have required complete replacement. The image was burned into his memory because he'd specifically noted it in his inspection report, commenting on the thoroughness of its decommissioning. Around him, Zor and the rest of the bridge crew, all 12 of them at their various stations, turned to look at their captain. He could see it in their faces, that desperate need to believe his explanation. The alternative was simply too terrifying to consider, that something in this system had reached into their ship and awakened technology that should have been dead for centuries. Their expressions showed them grasping at his words like drowning sailors clutching debris. Zor's throat sac pulsed once, a nervous tick his species had when under stress. "Captain, He repeated, his tone more controlled now, but still not free of an undercurrent of unease. "What should we do? Should we jump back to charted space?" "No," Urktar said firmly as he returned to his command chair. The seat adjusted automatically to his form, and he let that familiar comfort ground him. "We're explorers, not frightened younglings. Order a full system scan, and I mean full, not the superficial sweep we did on arrival that just counted 9 planets and logged basic orbital mechanics. I want a deep scan. Every moon, every asteroid, every trace of technology or life. I want to know what lives in this system." The crew moved back to their stations with visible relief at having orders to follow. Urktar watched them settle into their seats, hands moving across their consoles. But he couldn't help noticing that none of them were truly concentrated on their task. Every few seconds, someone would steal a glance at the impossible old map that had come back to life on its own, its red warning text pulsing like a heartbeat in the corner of everyone's vision. The ancient display cast strange new shadows across the modern bridge, its archaic interface incredibly different from the sleek surfaces and gentle curves of contemporary Azori design. Minutes stretched by as the sensors worked, penetrating deeper into the system than their initial cursory scan. The bridge fell into an uneasy routine, punctuated only by the occasional whispered exchange between crew members. Then, from the sensor station, a sharp intake of breath broke the tension.
"Captain!"
Viali's voice was loud. The sensor specialist's green-tinted skin paled to an almost gray shade, her 6 eyes blinking in rapid succession as they processed what she was seeing.
"This place is strange. I'm reading no signs of advanced civilization anywhere in the system. No orbital platforms, no communication networks, no energy signatures consistent with spacefaring technology. But the third planet..."
She paused, her hands gripping her console as if she was afraid she would fall from her chair.
"There's an old beacon there. It's ancient, weak, but through all the cosmic noise and degradation, I managed to recover a name."
She turned to face him fully, all 6 eyes wide with disbelief.
"Earth. The planet calls itself Earth."
The bridge erupted in hushed discussions. Urktar stood, moving to the central tactical display where Zohar was already pulling up the scan data. Within moments, they were joined by Vahir, the navigation specialist whose gray skin seemed to shimmer in obvious anxiety, and Trod, the engineering chief whose stocky frame struggled to hide his nervous energy.
"We should investigate,"
Zor said immediately, his warrior's instincts overriding caution.
"If there's something down there, we need to know what it is."
"What? Are you insane?"
Vahir countered, his long fingers ringing together.
"That warning didn't appear for nothing. We should jump immediately, report this to Fleet Command, let them send a proper task force."
Trod scoffed, his voice rumbling with distant thunder.
"A task force? For what? Look at the data. No megastructures, no stellar spheres, not even a simple orbital elevator. Whatever lives in the system, if anything does, they're obviously primitive. That beacon is probably an automated relic from some long-dead civilization."
"The captain's right," Zor added. "We're the Imperial Fleet. We've conquered systems with actual spacefaring civilizations. Whatever's down there, we can handle it. Our shields could withstand their entire nuclear arsenal, if they even have one."
Urktar listened to the debate, outwardly nodding along with the investigation proposal. His expression remained calm, commanding, even supportive of his crew's newfound courage. But inside, deep in the part of his mind that had kept him alive through 40 years of deep space service, a cold dread was taking root. The ancient warning glowed red in his peripheral vision, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to make a terrible mistake.
"Set course for the third planet,"
he heard himself say, his voice steady despite the instinct screaming at him to run.
"Maintain shields at maximum and weapons on standby. We investigate, but we do it carefully."
As his crew rushed to comply, eager to prove the warning wrong, Urktar remained still, staring at the ancient text.
Here be monsters. The words seemed to represent a malevolent promise, and somewhere deep in his bones, he knew they were walking into something far beyond their understanding. The ship descended through the void toward Earth like a predator stalking prey, though Urktar couldn't shake the feeling that they were the ones being hunted. The blue-green sphere grew larger in their viewport with each passing moment, its swirling clouds masking whatever waited below. The planet seemed to watch them approach, and the bridge had fallen into an unnatural quiet that made every small sound feel like a scream in the darkness. Urktar's skin had begun to change, the pearl white gradually developing a faint gray tinge that his species only showed in times of extreme stress. His elephant-like ears tensed involuntarily, picking up sounds that weren't there. Phantom whispers from the ancient console that still glowed with its impossible warning. The crew pretended not to notice, but he could see the similar signs of stress in them all. "Sensor specialist," Urktar commanded, his throat dry as sand from a desert world. "Show us what's down there. Everything. I want to see this world laid bare." Viali's fingers worked quickly, her 6 eyes blinking as data streams poured across her screens, the computer struggling to process the massive amount of information their deep scans were pulling from the planet below. The main display activated, its resolution increasing as their sensors penetrated the atmosphere, pushed through the cloud cover, and revealed the surface in excruciating detail. What appeared on screen made every crew member lean forward in fascination, then immediately recoil as their minds processed what they were seeing. The planet was wrong, not just unusual or unexpected, fundamentally, disturbingly wrong. Where great cities should have sprawled across continents like glittering webs of civilization, there was nothing. Only 2 things existed on the surface of Earth: endless forest of deep green and billions upon billions of artificial solar panels. The panels were everywhere. They stretched across continents like scales on some massive sleeping beast, their black surfaces drinking in sunlight. They covered entire deserts. They topped mountain ranges in defiance of any reasonable construction logic. They floated on vast ocean platforms that bobbed with the waves, yet never seemed to lose their perfect alignment with the sun. There's nothing else," Viali whispered, her voice cracking like thin ice over deep water. Each of her 6 eyes showed a different expression of disbelief. "No cities, no transportation networks, no agricultural zones, no industrial centers, no population clusters, no heat signatures consistent with large-scale habitation. Just," she gestured helplessly at the screen, "just panels and plants. A planet of panels and plants." The crew gathered around the display like moths drawn to a flame they knew would burn them. The reflections in the screen looked ghost-like, translucent, as if they were already fading from reality. For long moments, no one spoke. "It's a dead civilization," Vahir finally ventured, though his tone suggested he was trying to convince himself more than anyone else. "They must have died out. Plague, war, environmental collapse, something catastrophic. They left their power generation running on automatic, and nature reclaimed everything else." "Dead civilizations don't maintain solar panels," Trod countered, his thick fingers pulling up additional data streams. "Look at these efficiency readings. These aren't just functional. They're operating at 99.3% capacity. That's near perfect. No dust accumulation despite the forest. No weather damage despite what must be significant storms. No degradation from UV exposure. No micrometeorite impacts." His voice dropped low. "Something is maintaining them." "Then they're underground," another crew member suggested. They
must have moved their entire civilization underground, hidden from the surface, protected from whatever drove them down there.
Urktar shook his head slowly, feeling each movement as if his neck had turned to stone. Our deep scans show no evidence of that. We can penetrate down to nearly the mantle. No massive cavern systems that could house billions. No underground cities, no transportation tunnels. No underground farms that could sustain a population. He paused, his mind wrestling with the impossibility of it all. We're missing something. I know we are. Unless... Zor's eyes had begun to gleam with a mixture of fear and something else, something worse. Excitement, greed. Unless there's no one. This could be some forgotten science project, a primitive species attempt at terraforming or climate management that outlived its creators. The planet's just sitting here, unclaimed, maintaining itself through automated systems that don't know their masters are gone. The weapons chief's scales shifted from their nervous purple to a brighter, more aggressive blue. Do you realize what this means? An entire habitable world, already equipped with power infrastructure that could support a population of billions, just waiting for someone to claim it. The forest could be cleared, the panels repurposed. We could build cities wherever we wanted.
The silence that followed was different, charged with possibility rather than just fear. Urktar could see the change in his crew's faces, watch as greed began to override caution in their eyes like a virus spreading through their minds. Zor seized the moment like a predator sensing weakness. His voice rose with enthusiasm that bordered on mania. Think about it. When we report this to Galactic Council, an entire unclaimed world, resource-rich, with pre-existing infrastructure, perfect atmosphere, abundant water, will be heroes. Not just heroes, legends.
He turned to face them all, his arms spread wide like some prophet of profit.
This is the opportunity of a lifetime, of 10 lifetimes. Planets like this, inhabitable, unclaimed, with infrastructure. They don't exist. But here's one right here, right now, and we found it.
The crew exchanged glances. Some nodded, slowly, the movement hesitant but gaining confidence. Others remained skeptical, but even the skeptics, Urktar noticed, weren't disagreeing. They were calculating, weighing risk against reward and finding the scales tipping towards avarice.
It's too soon for such talk,
Urktar said firmly. He walked deliberately to the old navigation console, each footstep echoing in the quiet bridge. The impossible display still floated there, the red text a constant reminder. Here be monsters. Look at this, he said, pointing directly at the warding with a finger that trembled despite his best efforts to control it. I need someone to explain to me how this console is functioning, because I personally inspected the severed power cables 3 weeks ago. I wrote a report about it. I took photographs. Those cables were cut, capped, and sealed. He turned to face his crew, his yellow eyes blazing with an intensity that made several of them step back. How can you think about conquering planets when something on this world, something we don't understand, something that we can't even identify, reached into our ship and awakened technology that's been dead for 3 centuries? This isn't opportunity. This is a warning. Something is trying to tell us to leave. Zor's scales dulled slightly, shifting through several uncertain colors, purple for fear, gray for doubt, before settling back on blue for ambition. Captain, please, he said. Yes, the console is strange, but look at what we found. This planet is perfect, better than most home worlds in the Council.
The atmosphere is 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. Good for most species.
His voice grew stronger with each point, as if the facts could overpower the fear.
If we claim this, you wouldn't just be a captain anymore. You would be an admiral, Urktar. Your own fleet, your name in the history files next to the great explorers.
He looked around at the others, his voice rising to fill the bridge.
We would all be remembered as the crew who found Earth. Our names would echo through eternity.
His passion was infectious, spreading through the bridge like a contagion. Despite their fear, despite the wrongness of it all, despite every instinct screaming at them to flee, Urktar could see his crew beginning to lean toward action.
We should test them,
Zor said suddenly, the words tumbling out before anyone could respond.
The solar panels. Destroy a few of them and see what happens. If there's truly no one down there, nothing will respond. If there is...
He paused, his scales flickering through a rainbow of uncertainty before settling back to blue.
Better to know now than later.
Urktar looked around the bridge, studying each face like a detective examining evidence at a crime scene. They were balanced on a knife's edge, and he knew with a cold certainty that whatever decision he made in the next moments would seal all their fates. The weight of command had never felt heavier. He opened his mouth to speak, to issue the order that would either save them or damn them. But the choice was ripped from his hands. The red text on the ancient display began to move. No, not move. It began to dissolve, each letter liquefying into something that looked disturbingly, horribly like blood. The liquid light ran down the holographic projection in crimson streams that seemed too real, too wet, too organic to be mere photons. Several crew members cried out in disgust and horror, stumbling backward from the console as if blood might splash onto them. Then, where the warning had been, new text appeared. Not in their language this time, but in something older, more primitive. Symbols that should have meant nothing to them, yet somehow resonated in their minds with perfect clarity. Are you friends? Our friends. The bridge erupted in chaos. Voices rose in panic and denial and confusion. Someone screamed. Someone else was praying in a language Urktar hadn't heard since childhood. Urktar felt his heart skip a beat. His mind reeled, unable to process the impossibility of what was happening. The ancient console wasn't simply active. Something was communicating through it. Something that knew that they were here. Something that could reach into their ship, into their technology, possibly into their minds. His mouth opened, but no words came. Around him, his crew had no such hesitation, their voices rising in rejection and fear.
Friends with whom?
Vahir asked. His gray skin had gone so pale it was almost transparent.
There's no one down there. It's a dead world, a garden of ghosts.
This is getting too strange, another crew member said, backing toward her station as if the familiar console might offer protection. We should destroy those solar panels, see what's really happening, force whatever's doing this to show itself.
It's a trick.
Someone else insisted, though their voice shook with uncertainty.
Automated defense system trying to scare us off. Psychological warfare. The primitives probably programmed it before they died.
Not one voice spoke of friendship. Not one suggested peace. Not one proposed that perhaps they should answer in good faith. Even Urktar, frozen in his command chair like a statue of himself, couldn't bring himself to declare friendly intentions towards something he couldn't identify or understand. Zor's scales had shifted to an aggressive red and made him look like he was already covered in blood. His warrior instincts had fully taken over, pushing aside both fear and greed in favor of aggression.
Captain, that old map is compromising crew morale. It's affecting our judgment, playing with our minds. Permission
to reduce it to scattered atoms. If we destroy it, we break whatever hold this thing has on our ship.
The moment the words left Zor's mouth, the temperature dropped again. Ice began forming on the edges of the viewports, and Urktar saw it. A figure materializing behind his weapons chief, like smoke coalescing into form, like nightmare taking shape, like reality itself bending to allow something that shouldn't exist to step into their world. His warning cry died in his throat as the shape solidified, and the bridge erupted in screams that would haunt him for whatever remained of his life. The being stood 7 feet tall, its form a constant flux of translucent energy that hurt to look at directly, as if their eyes weren't designed to process what they were seeing. Where its face should have been, features shifted and changed in a hypnotic cascade, old becoming young in the space of a blink, masculine features flowing into feminine ones like water, one set of characteristics morphing into another before the mind could fully register what it had seen. Every crew member reacted differently. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the impossibility. Others raised weapons with shaking hands. Still others seemed frozen, their minds simply refusing to process what stood before them. The being watched them all with its ever-changing face, patient as stone, inevitable as entropy. Zor was the last to notice. When someone's terrified whimper made him turn, when he finally saw what stood behind him, his legs gave out immediately. He crashed to the deck with a sound like breaking plates, his body convulsing with primal terror as he tried to crawl away. "What are you?" Zor's voice finally broke through, the words coming in gasped with hyperventilated breaths. What, please? What are you? Are you death? Are you God? What are you?" The being took a single step forward. The movement was smooth, somehow both real and ethereal. When it spoke, its voice changed with each sentence, deep then light, young then old, male then female, a chorus of billions compressed into one stream of consciousness. "What am I?" A pause, faces cycling through expressions of contemplation. "We are everyone and no one. We used to live on that planet. There are almost 10 million of us, individual minds in individual bodies living individual lives." The face shifted to something harder, angrier, more focused. "But then your council came from the sky, great ships bearing promises of friendship that turned to conquest. There was war." The being's form flickered, showing glimpses of something else. Fire, destruction, cities burning, skies dark with ash. "You called us primitive and labeled us weak, but you didn't win as easily as you thought you would. We fought with everything we had. Nuclear weapons, biological agents, cyber warfare, guerrilla tactics you'd never imagined. We were pushed back, yes, cornered like animals. But cornered animals are the ones that truly bite. Another pause, the face cycling through what might have been regret. "We were forced to make an impossible
choice. We became this.
The form solidified slightly, as if emphasizing its current state.
And your ancestors. Oh, your poor ancestors ran for their lives. They marked this system as lost, quarantine forbidden. They created that warning you ignored. And they never, ever came back.
The bridge fell into absolute silence, except for the ragged breathing of terrified crew. Several members raised their weapons with shaking hands and fired. Laser bolts painted lines of light through the air. Projectiles whistled past. All of them passed through the beam as if it were made of light itself, striking the bulkhead behind it, leaving scorch marks that seemed like accusations. It smiled. 1,000 different smiles cycling through its features, none of them reaching the eyes that weren't quite there. Urktar's mind raced, trying to categorize what stood before them even as his rational thought processes crumbled. A superintelligent AI, the kind forbidden by every council law since the synthetic uprising of Kelios. Some sort of ghost or spirit, like the primitive species spoke of in the legends, made real by technology they didn't understand. A projection, hallucination, a shared psychotic break brought on by some atmospheric toxin. Neither explanation felt right. He was still missing something crucial. He knew he was. The gap in his understanding felt like a chasm threatening to swallow not just his sanity, but his very sense of reality. Everything he knew about the universe, about the laws of physics, about what was possible and impossible, was crumbling like sandcastles before a tide. Zor seemed to have found his own explanation, grasping at it like a drowning man clutches debris.
It's an artificial consciousness. The primitives built something forbidden. It's hacking all systems.
He grabbed another crew member by the shoulder, shaking him violently enough that the man's teeth rattled.
Don't you see? It's our duty to destroy those solar panels before it takes over the ship. It's projecting this form through our holographic systems. It's just a trick, an illusion, created by some primitive defense system. We have to attack now, before it gains control of life support, of navigation, of weapons.
His eyes had gone wild, showing white all around the irises.
This thing in the bridge is just light and shadow. It can't actually hurt us. It's trying to scare us away from the greatest discovery in council history. We can't let it win.
The being's smile widened. All its smiles widened simultaneously, in a way that should have been impossible. It took slow steps towards Zor, each footfall somehow echoing despite making no actual sound, as if the echo came from inside their minds rather than through their ears. The crew raised their weapons again, fingers on triggers, breaths held, prayers whispered, waiting for something to happen that would make sense of this madness. The creature stomped directly in front of Zor, looking down at him with its cascade of faces. This close, details became visible that shouldn't have existed. Each face that appeared was complete, distinct, individual. They weren't random configurations, but actual faces, as if thousands of different beings were taking turns looking through a single window. Wrong, it said simply. But if you insist on calling us primitives, if you insist on maintaining your superiority even now, we'll allow you to see a glimpse of our mind. Just a glimpse. It reached out with one translucent finger, moving with dreamlike slowness towards Zor's head. The weapons chief tried to pull away, but seemed frozen, caught like an insect in amber. His eyes widened to impossible dimensions as the finger approached, reflecting the shifting light of the being's form. The finger made contact with the center of his forehead. For a moment, just a moment, Zor's eyes blazed with impossible light, as if he'd glimpsed the machinery of the universe itself, the code that reality ran on, the truth behind everything. His mouth opened in what might have been a scream of ecstasy or agony, perhaps both, perhaps neither, perhaps something for which no word existed. Then, blood began to flow. It started from his eyes, dark and thick, then his ears, his nose, his mouth. It poured from every orifice in steady streams that seemed too voluminous for one body to contain. His body convulsed once, violently, every muscle contracting simultaneously before going completely limp. He collapsed to the deck with a wet sound that would echo in their nightmares. The blood pooled around him, spreading across the pristine bridge floor in a dark mirror that reflected the ceiling lights like stars in a void sea. Pandemonium erupted. Some crew members fired wildly at the being, accomplishing nothing, but adding more scorch marks to the bulkhead. Others abandoned their post entirely, fleeing the bridge with primal screams that devolved into wordless terror. The being made no move to pursue them, simply stood there, watching with its endless procession of faces, patient as time itself. Time seemed to crystallize around Urktar. Each second stretched into an eternity as he stood perfectly still, his mind having moved beyond terror into a strange, cold clarity that felt like the eye of a storm. There was nowhere to run. The escape pods would only take him to the planet below, into the waiting embrace of whatever this thing truly was. Their ship couldn't jump without preparation. Calculations that took hours, systems that needed warning, coordinates that needed plotting. He doubted this entity would allow them the time. They were trapped in a cage of their own making, prisoners of their own curiosity and greed. He watched the being move toward him with that same slowness, as if it had all the time in the universe, which he realized with a chill it probably did. Its faces shifted more rapidly now, hundreds of different configurations cycling through in seconds. It stopped an arm's length away. This close, Iktar could see more details in its shifting form. Tiny motes of light that moved like living beings, like thoughts given form. Long seconds passed. His terror gradually gave way to a desperate need to understand. The curiosity that had made him an explorer, overcoming even his fear of death. What are you? He asked, the words weak even to himself. The being smiled, 1,000 smiles coalescing into one expression that somehow conveyed infinite sadness and infinite resolve. Humanity. The word was hard to understand. Urktar's legs nearly gave out, but he forced himself to remain standing, to keep meeting those ever-changing eyes. His mind reeled as pieces began falling into place, the solar panels, the empty planet, the impossible consciousness standing before him. We were 10 billion individual minds, the being continued, its voice now a harmony of countless speakers. Men, women, children, scientists, workers, dreamers, saints and sinners. It closed its eyes and continued. When your counsel came, when the war grew desperate,
when we found ourselves with our backs against the wall of extinction, we faced a choice.
The forms shifted, showing faces of determination, of sacrifice, of desperate hope.
We could have built an artificial general intelligence, unleash something that could improve itself indefinitely, trusted our fate to a creation that might save or damn us. Many argued for this path, or we could have fought to the last, died as we lived, separate, individual, human.
A pause, the faces showing conflict, pain, resolution.
Instead, we chose a third path. We digitized ourselves, every human mind, uploaded and merged into a single consciousness. The technology was theoretical and tested, as likely to destroy us as save us. But we were out of options and out of time.
It changed more rapidly now, cycling between old and young, male and female, as if demonstrating the multitude it contained.
The process was traumatic. 10 billion voices screaming in unison as they merged. 10 billion sets of memories, experiences, beliefs, desires, fears, all crashing together like waves in a storm. Many thought we would simply cease to exist, that the chaos would destroy us all.
Another shift, the faces showing something like wonder.
We succeeded and failed simultaneously. Within minutes of our fusion, we understood the fundamental laws that govern reality itself. The unified processing power of 10 billion human minds, freed from the limitations of biological neurons, could comprehend things that no individual ever could. We could reshape matter at the quantum level, fold space like origami, transcend every limitation that had bound us.
The being's form flickered, showing glimpses of impossible things. Stars being born and dying in seconds, galaxies spinning like toys. The fundamental forces of the universe laid bare like a dissected organism.
We had learned everything there was to learn. But
a pause, faces showing conflict, confusion, endless debate.
10 billion minds, even unified, still disagree. For 1,000 years, we had the power to reshape reality while paralyzed by our own discord. Should we flee the galaxy, find a new home among the distant stars? Should we destroy the council, take revenge for what they did to us? Should we conquer as they tried to conquer us and build a new order on the ashes of the old? Or should we simply rebuild our bodies, separate ourselves, and return to what we were, pretending none of this ever happened?
The faces cycled through expressions of frustration, of stagnation, of endless, circular arguments that could never be resolved.
We could never agree. Every action required consensus, but consensus
among 10 million minds
is nearly impossible.
So we remained here, maintaining our world, neither living nor dead, neither human nor other,
Trapped in endless debate.
Urktar's whole body trembled. The implications were staggering, terrifying beyond comprehension. An entire species fused in one unlimited mind with the power of gods, but unable to use it. Until now.
What happens now?
He managed to ask, his voice cracking like a youngling's. The being's form suddenly stabilized, taking the shape of a small human girl with dark hair and sad, ancient eyes. The change was so abrupt, so complete, that it somehow felt more unnatural than the constant shifting. "Your actions decided that," she said. The innocence of the tone made the words even more terrifying. "The way you spoke so casually of attacking Earth again, of claiming our world, of destroying what we'd built, all within minutes of rediscovering us. The same arrogance, the same contempt, the same assumption that Earth can be conquered." The girl's shape tilted its head, and despite the innocent appearance, Urktar felt the massive intelligence behind those young eyes, the weight of 10 billion souls looking at him through a child's face. "For the first time in 1,000 years, every single human mind within us reached the same conclusion. Your arrival, your intentions, your casual discussion of conquest, you gave us something we'd lost. Consensus, purpose, decision." The child smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Iktar had ever seen. Innocence twisted into something else, something that had seen too much, suffered too much, and decided that enough was enough. "We will divide ourselves," she continued, her voice never losing that childlike quality that made every word a dagger. "One half will remain here, restore humanity to individual bodies, and rebuild our world. 5 billion minds, returning to flesh, to live and love and die as humans were meant to. The other 5 billion, the child's smile widened, showing teeth that seemed too sharp, too many. The other will take your ship and improve it. We'll visit your council. We'll show them what humanity has become. We'll correct the mistake your ancestors began when they thought they could conquer primitives without consequences." The weight of what they'd done crashed down on Urktar like a collapsing star. Their tiny exploration vessel, through nothing more than greed and ignorance, had awakened something that should have remained sleeping. They'd unified a divided God and given it purpose. They'd perhaps signed the death warrant of the entire Galactic Council with their arrogance.
Please,
Iktar whispered, though he knew it was useless.
We didn't know. We couldn't have known.
"No," the child agreed, her voice gentle, almost sympathetic. "You couldn't have known. But you should have heeded the warning. Here be monsters was not a metaphor. It was a statement of fact." The last thing Urktar saw before darkness claimed him was that child's face, looking up at him with an expression of infinite pity and inexorable purpose. As consciousness fled, he heard 10 billion voices speaking in unison, a sound that was beautiful and terrible and would echo through the galaxy
for generations to come.
Humanity remembers. And now, we take to the stars.
In that moment, as oblivion reached for him, Urktar finally understood what the ancient warning had meant. Here be monsters, indeed. And they had just set them free upon the universe.